Alright, so, hello. Those of you that were looking for this video yesterday, I apologize. There was a mistake, not a mistake, but something went wrong with the recording on the Zoom. So when I noticed that, it was too late for me to upload. So I'm uploading the video now. It's a little late. So if you're waiting on the video, if you're barely doing your exit ticket, it's not a big deal. I will make sure that it's not counted against you. So let's get started. We're talking about the early Civil War. So we're getting into the war today. We're going to talk about the different factors that contributed to the Union victory in the Civil War. Right? We've got a couple of key terms for you. At least one advantage the Union has, and at least one advantage the Confederate had. What did you think of? Think about it on your own for a second. And now, when we were doing this in class, I heard things like the Union has infrastructure. They have more foodstuffs. They have more supplies. They have more war materials. They have more people. That's really good. And the biggest thing that you remember about the Confederacy, right? They're fighting on their home turf. They have the morale behind them early on. And most important, they have better military leadership. So with that being said, let's move forward. Again, early Civil War. This is a map of the wartime United States during the Civil War. So this is what we're looking at. The gray areas are territories. They are not yet states, except these are the Great Lakes. But you get the idea. The dark blue is the Union. The dark red is the Confederacy. These light blue states here, Delaware, Maryland, what will be West Virginia, Kentucky, and Missouri, are what we call border states. And they are border states because they stayed with the Union, but they still held slaves. So they were slave-holding states within the Union. Now I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. It's going to come up in a little bit. So, key point one. Early in the Civil War, the Confederates had strong resolve, great leadership, and the element of surprise, leading to early victories over Union forces. Early on, the Confederates are going to win. And it's going to happen right away because right away Lincoln's going to take steps to go to war the second the South secedes. So let's get into why. If you need time on any of these as we're going through, remember, just pause this, get your notes in, and then we're going to move forward. First battle of the Civil War is a battle called Fort Sumter in South Carolina. Now, the big thing to know about this battle, it's the first time that it happens, and the reason it happens is because right after the South secedes, specifically South Carolina, southern states start seceding, Confederates begin to seize and capture Union holdings in their states. And Fort Sumter is a fort, a coastal fort that was, I think it was still under construction or was just finished, something like that. And the Union garrison that's in there, small, undermanned, undersupplied, does not want to give up. They don't want to abandon the fort. So they don't want to give up. The Confederates demand that they surrender the fort. When the leaders refuse in the Union, a battle breaks out. Now, it's not a full-on battle. It's a bombardment. So basically, artillery shells over and over again. That's kind of what happens. I believe it's something like 30,000 shells in 30 hours were fired. Something to that effect. And when all is said and done, no one is killed. And the Confederates are able to take the fort when the Union surrenders. So that is something to keep in mind. Let's go ahead and move forward. Leadership. Leadership is really important. The Confederates have Robert E. Lee. General Robert E. Lee. He's the main leader of the Confederate forces, and he will lead the Confederates throughout the entire war. Very good at what he does. Probably the best military mind in the United States right as the Civil War is starting. Probably. You won't find many people arguing that he isn't. Early on in the Union, you got a guy named George McClellan. And I don't have very nice things to say about him because he's not that great of a general. He's inexperienced. He is... how else would you say? He's inexperienced. He is overly cautious, and he's kind of afraid of a fight. And those are not things you want your general to be. And he will lead the war, the Union early on, and later on, eventually, he will run for president against Lincoln in '64. But halfway through the war, not even halfway, a little before halfway through the war, eventually he will be replaced. and he will be replaced eventually by Ulysses S. Grant. So Ulysses S. Grant will be the one who wins the Civil War. We'll get into him tomorrow. So, let's get into a battle. Let's talk about First Bull Run, or as it's also known, Manassas. This is the Battle of Bull Run, or the Battle of Manassas. Write down both names. You need to know both names. Certain sources will reference it as Manassas. Other sources will reference it as Bull Run. You need to know both. The battle took place on July 1st, 1861. It is the first major land battle between the Union and the Confederacy. And it occurs when the Union tries to go south to invade and attack and capture Richmond, Virginia, which is the Confederate capital. But they are met by Confederate resistance. That Confederate resistance is led by Robert E. Lee. Very famously, Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederates, asked Robert E. Lee, hey, should we, abandon Richmond? And Robert E. Lee's like, I got this, don't worry about it. And then the Confederate troops will rout the Union. And a rout is basically when the attacking army is not only stopped, but then forced to retreat and run all the way back. And it sets the stage, and it shows that the Confederate will dominate early in the war. So now let's move on. Again, if you need any time on any of these slides, you should be pausing. Thomas Stonewall Jackson gets his nickname at this battle. Basically, he's ordered to hold the line against the Union, and he does so spectacularly. He is other Confederates are apparently talking about him, like, look at Jackson there, like a Stonewall standing over there. And that's where the name comes from. What do you need to know? You need to know that Stonewall Jackson got his nickname at this battle. This is where he gets famous. This is where he gets well known. Something to keep in mind. So, I talked a lot about this in the class live session, which I'm bummed that recording didn't get saved because there was a lot of really good questions there that I'm having difficulty remembering. But what you have with the Civil War is technology is getting better and mindsets aren't changing. It's still a long ways away from modern warfare, right? What we would consider modern warfare today. But it's closer to that than any conflict had been before, especially a major conflict that the U.S. had. But the military minds are still very much in the old way of thinking. So, like, for example, the weapons they're using, the muskets, they're more accurate. They're actually accurate. Now, when you point it at something that's far away and shoot, it'll hit it. The artillery is more accurate. It's deadlier. There's actually explosives now as opposed to just metal balls hitting things. The naval ships are more deadly. So everything's getting more dangerous. But nobody quite realizes how deadly and how dangerous it'll be yet. Nobody's aware. People, even though they know the individual weapon systems might be dangerous and deadly, they don't realize how devastating they'll be until they're being used by armies. And this battle shows that to both sides. So both sides think this is going to be a fast war. It's going to be easy, quick to win. The Confederates know that if they ever want to win, it has to be fast. And the Union thinks, hey, we have all the people, we have all the stuff, we'll win right away. But after this battle, both sides realize that this war will last a long time. And has the possibility to, and it will last 5 years. Families, early on, this is a fun story, right? Show up to the battlefield with picnics to watch. They're excited, right? Hey, there's no Netflix. What else are you going to do? You're going to watch the battle. And then right away, get scared and run away when they realize, oh no, this is not something fun or worth watching. So you need to know about the families watching. You need to know that after this battle, people realize, oh, this war is going to suck and it's going to take forever. Get out of here. Alright, sorry about that. I don't know what was going on there. So, you don't need to write anything here. All I'm going to say is that I want to show you this map to show you what battles look like now. What do you get here? What is this showing you? That this war is one of the earliest examples of modern combat. And as a result, the map's a big mess. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of combat moving around. It's old world thinking meshed with new world technology, and eventually new world tactics come into play. Just something to consider. Speaking of technology, ironclads and navies. It is still the cream of the crop that have navies. Having a navy is still a really big deal. It's still really important. And the ironclad is like the new capital ship of the country. It's metal. It's metal armored ship. It's not wood anymore. Battle of Hampton Roads is what the battle's called, where the Merrimack and the Monitor met and exchanged some rounds. It's a revolution in naval combat. It's the first time metal warships are used instead of wooden ones. And the battle doesn't really go anywhere, but just you got to know that the Civil War is the first time in the world that metal warships are being used. And here's a more artistic rendition of the Battle of Hampton Roads. This is closer to what an actual ironclad looked like. Not so much this. This is, I don't know what this is. I don't know who drew this. They're on drugs or something. But this right here is what you're thinking of, what you should think of when you think of an ironclad. So, next up, the Battle of Antietam. Antietam was fought on September 17th of 1862. It is still, to this day, the single bloodiest day in American military history, with over 4,000 casualties. Remember that everybody dying in this war is American. So Antietam, single bloodiest day in American military history. Up to now, it's still the bloodiest day in American military history. After the battle, the Union are considered the victors, but McClellan does not press his advantage. What does that mean? Well, up until very recently, I would say maybe the Second World War, maybe the first, when you beat the army that you're fighting against and they start running away, it's kind of your job, especially if you want the war to end and you want to make sure that there is no... Oh, I did something. Sorry about that. So, especially if you want the war to end and you want to make sure that there is no... How should I put this? Extension of conflict. You want to make sure that this war ends quickly. And so one way to do that is to chase and attack the army that's retreating. Maybe you can scatter it. Maybe you can kill the leader. Maybe you can capture the leader. Maybe you can capture the army. But McClellan doesn't do that. In part because he's a little worried and a little scared, and in part because he's not an aggressive general. And for the most part, you need your generals to have a little bit of aggression. They need to know when to not be aggressive, but they have to be willing to be aggressive. McClellan definitely wasn't that, and so Lincoln sees this finally, and he fires him on the spot. Another really important thing about Antietam. The Union had not won a victory. The first year of the war goes really bad for the Union. They lose at Manassas. They lose everywhere. And they need a big victory in order to show people, hey, look, we can win this war, and hey, we're doing stuff to make this war win. And when they get it, Lincoln uses the moment, uses the feeling in the Union to announce the Emancipation Proclamation. Up until this point, the Union's not fighting this war for slavery. This war is not about slavery to the world. This war is about some, state disagreements, right? And we all know that's not true. We all know the Confederates fight this war for slavery. And the Emancipation Proclamation makes the war about slavery. It ends slavery in the Confederacy, not anywhere else. Just the Confederacy. It doesn't end them in the country. It ends them in the Confederacy. Why? Because of the border states. The border states still had slaves, and Lincoln didn't want to lose support from the border states. But it's still a very positive step forward, and on your exit ticket, you'll see the Emancipation. I'll give you a little excerpt of it. And so, Antietam victory leads to Lincoln announcing the Emancipation Proclamation. These are actual photos, post-war, of what happened. It's old-timey camera, so it's not like a war correspondent was there, but these are real photographs of the horrors of war. It's the first time people start to see this stuff in person. It will not be the last. And with that, guys, your exit ticket is on Google Classroom. I know usually, because I've been doing the Zoom recordings, you'll have me here breaking it down, but I do not have that for you today. So if you have any questions, message me on Teams. Again, I apologize that this video is so late, but it is going to be up. It'll be up first thing in the morning. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. See you all in class.